The night was heavy with rain, streets glistening under fractured light. Emma stumbled from the car, breath shallow, her chest crushed by disbelief. She whispered, "Daniel, how could you?" Her voice cracked, torn between rage and despair. Across the street, Daniel walked with Rachel, their fingers entwined like a cruel truth carved into flesh. Emma's heart pounded, her world shattering in real time. Her knees weakened as she fought the storm raging inside her soul. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, yet her throat was a graveyard of broken vows. Emma's mind replayed his promises, each one now poison. The betrayal was not whispered in shadows. It was painted in the open air, undeniable. The man she had given everything to had given himself to another. Her tears blurred the world, but the pain was mercilessly clear. Emma staggered down the empty street, the storm drowning out her sobs. The night pressed against her chest like a cruel weight. She whispered, "Everything I believed is gone." Her thoughts raced, each step heavier than the last. She remembered Daniel's laughter, his promises, and the warmth that once filled her world. Now those memories cut her deeper than knives. Her body shook with the chill of betrayal and rain. She felt stripped of dignity, wandering like a ghost. The silence of the street mocked her grief, and she feared the night would never release her pain. Daniel didn't look back. His footsteps were steady, as if Emma's heartbreak meant nothing. Rachel's grip on his hand was firm, smug. Emma whispered, "How could you choose her?" She felt invisible, erased from her own story. The distance between them grew, but the betrayal carved deeper into her. Daniel once held her hand with devotion, but now his fingers intertwined with another's. The sound of their laughter twisted like knives. Emma's heart ached, torn open by the cruel sight of love given to someone else while she bled alone in the rain. Rachel turned her head, her eyes locking with Emma's for just a moment. There was no shame, no regret, only satisfaction. Emma's breath caught, her heart sinking deeper. Rachel smirked faintly, her gaze a dagger of cruelty. Emma whispered, "You were my friend." The words were swallowed by the storm. Betrayal wasn't only from Daniel, it came from the person she once trusted most. Rachel's presence was poison, her beauty twisted by deception. Emma trembled, caught between rage and despair, realizing her world had crumbled in the hands of those she loved most. Emma's legs gave way, and she collapsed onto the cold pavement. Her palms pressed against the wet ground, her tears blending with rain. She whispered, "Why me? Why now?" The words felt hollow, swallowed by thunder. Memories flashed before her eyes, their wedding vows, their children's laughter, nights of whispered love. Every moment now felt like a cruel lie. Her heart screamed for answers that would never come. She was left kneeling in the storm, a shattered woman holding the fragments of a broken life, while the night bore silent witness. Morning light crept through the curtains, but it felt cold and merciless. Emma sat at the edge of her bed, clutching a framed photo of her wedding day. She whispered, "I gave him everything." Her voice cracked as she remembered the sacrifices she had made for love and family. She had built her life around Daniel, shaping every decision around his needs and their children's dreams. Her hands trembled, the frame slipping slightly as her tears stained the glass. Emma's heart ached not only from betrayal but from the cruel realization that all her devotion had been wasted. She stared at her reflection in the photo, wondering when her love had become invisible to the man she trusted most. From the hallway came the sound of innocent laughter, a reminder of the life she still carried within her walls. Emma leaned against the doorway, her heart torn as she watched her children playing, oblivious to the storm. She whispered, "They don't know." Her chest ached with guilt, realizing that their smiles were born from the illusion she could no longer protect. She wanted to preserve their innocence, to shield them from the sharp edges of truth, but betrayal had already seeped into every corner of their home. Emma's tears burned as she held the frame of the door, fighting the urge to collapse. She loved them too deeply to let her pain destroy their joy. Olivia arrived quietly, her footsteps soft but her presence grounding. Emma collapsed into her arms, whispering, "I can't breathe." Olivia's embrace was firm, a wall against the chaos Emma carried. "You're not alone," Olivia said, her voice steady, though her own eyes shimmered with pain. She had always been Emma's anchor, the sister who stood by her through every storm, and now she became the silent strength Emma needed most. Emma buried her face in Olivia's shoulder, sobbing as the weight of betrayal poured out in broken words. Olivia stroked her hair, holding her tighter, torn between comforting and her own anger at Daniel's cruelty. Emma stood before the mirror, her fingers tracing the cracks in her reflection. She whispered, "Who am I now?" The question lingered, echoing louder than the storm outside. Her swollen eyes stared back at her, a stranger in her own skin. The woman she saw was tired, broken, and barely holding herself together. She remembered the nights she believed in Daniel's promises, the mornings she carried their family on her shoulders. Now all that remained was doubt, stitched into her reflection. Emma's chest heaved, her tears falling onto the sink. She gripped the edge of the counter, fighting the feeling that her worth had been stolen by his lies. The night returned with silence, heavier than before. Emma lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling as shadows stretched across the room. She whispered, "I can't escape this." Her heart raced with every thought of Daniel and Rachel, their laughter echoing in her memory like a cruel curse. She pulled the blanket tighter, though no warmth could soothe the ache inside. The walls that once felt like home now felt like a prison, filled with ghosts of promises broken. Emma's tears slipped silently, her breath shallow as exhaustion pulled at her. She longed for peace, but the night reminded her that betrayal had no mercy, and healing was still far away. Emma sat in the dim glow of her bedroom, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through Daniel's phone she had found carelessly left on the dresser. Every message cut her deeper than the last. "You're everything to me," he had written, words she once believed belonged only to her. Her chest tightened as she whispered, "You lied to me, Daniel." The conversations unfolded like blades, revealing secret promises and intimate confessions to Rachel. Emma's tears blurred the screen, but nothing could erase the truth. The evidence was undeniable, proof that their life together had been a carefully constructed illusion. She gripped the phone tighter, her heart pounding like it was trying to escape. Olivia sat across from Emma, her eyes filled with sorrow as she reached for her sister's hands. "You can't carry this alone," she said softly. Emma shook her head, her voice breaking. "I don't know who I am anymore." Olivia's grip was steady, but her heart was torn. She wanted to protect Emma, to shield her from further pain, yet she also knew that the truth could not be hidden forever. Emma stared at her sister's face, searching for answers in her unwavering gaze. For the first time since the betrayal, she felt a fragile thread of safety in Olivia's presence, though the storm within her remained unrelenting. Emma stood by the window, staring into the rain-soaked night as memories flooded her mind. She whispered, "Every vow was a lie." Images of Daniel on their wedding day filled her thoughts, his promises now echoes of betrayal. The gold band on her finger felt like a shackle, its once sacred meaning reduced to a cruel reminder. Her chest rose sharply as if she were drowning in invisible waves. She pressed her forehead against the glass, letting the cold seep into her skin. Every broken promise left her hollow, a woman standing in a house built on lies. Mark approached cautiously, his voice low, as though speaking the truth might shatter Emma further. "There's more you don't know," he admitted, his eyes avoiding hers. Emma's body tensed, her hands clutching the armrest. "What do you mean, Mark?" she whispered, her tone shaking with both fear and fury. He sighed heavily, guilt pressing against his words. He confessed hints of Daniel's late nights and whispered conversations that had been overlooked for too long. Emma's heart pounded, her stomach twisting with dread. Every word was a dagger, peeling back the layers of betrayal she thought she had already uncovered. Emma stumbled into her bedroom, the weight of the revelations crushing her chest. She collapsed onto the bed, her breath ragged. "It's too much," she sobbed, clutching her pillow as though it could hold her together. The walls seemed to close in, the silence deafening. She buried her face in the fabric, her cries muffled but relentless. Her mind raced with images of Daniel and Rachel, of lies whispered in the shadows, of friends and family who may have known but said nothing. Her body shook violently as despair wrapped around her, threatening to consume what little strength she had left. The phone rang deep into the night, its sound slicing through Emma's restless silence. She hesitated, her hand trembling before she lifted the receiver. "Hello?" she whispered, her voice raw. On the other end came a voice she hadn't heard in years. "Emma, it's your mother," Margaret said softly. Emma froze, her chest tightening. Memories of their fractured past collided with her present torment. "Why now?" Emma asked, her tone sharp with both fear and longing. Margaret's sigh echoed through the line, heavy with secrets buried too long. "Because you deserve to know the truth before it destroys you completely." Emma pressed the phone tighter to her ear, her breath shaky. Margaret's voice carried guilt and urgency. "I never told you the truth about your father." Emma's heart raced, the words cracking her soul like glass. "What do you mean?" she demanded, her voice trembling. Margaret's silence hung heavy before she confessed. "The man you called your father isn't who he seemed. Daniel knew long before you did." Emma's world tilted. Her betrayal was not just from a husband, but rooted in blood, in family, in every lie carried from her past into her present. Emma's hands shook violently as Margaret's words echoed. "Daniel knew," her mother repeated. Emma staggered backward, the phone nearly slipping. "He knew about my father," she whispered, her voice breaking. Margaret's silence was answer enough. The betrayal widened, no longer just infidelity but a conspiracy of silence. Emma's eyes burned with fury. Daniel's lies had stretched further than she ever imagined. Not only had he broken their vows, he had carried truths that shattered the very core of her identity. Her body trembled as she whispered, "He betrayed me long before Rachel." Emma's eyes hardened as she clutched the counter, breath ragged. "I have to confront him," she whispered. Her reflection in the darkened window stared back, fractured but unyielding. Memories of Daniel's empty reassurances filled her mind, twisting into knives. The man she once loved had not only chosen another woman, but also built their marriage on deceit. Her pulse throbbed in her temples, each beat louder than the rain outside. "No more lies," she muttered, her voice fierce despite the tremor in her chest. Emma felt resolve rise like fire from the ashes of her broken heart. Rachel's voice echoed in Emma's memory, taunting with a venomous smile. "You never knew him like I did," she had once said. Emma clenched her fists, her body quivering with rage. Every word replayed as fuel, every smirk a reminder of the betrayal's cruelty. She whispered into the empty room, "You took my best friend. You took my husband, but you won't take what's left of me." Her voice shook, not from fear, but from the birth of something new, strength forged from ruin. The storm outside raged on, but inside, Emma was preparing for war. Emma stood face to face with Daniel and Rachel, the storm still echoing outside as if the world mirrored her fury. Her chest heaved, her hands shaking not with fear but with rage. "You lied to me, Daniel," she said, her voice steady, though her heart screamed. Rachel's smirk widened, venom in her silence. Daniel shifted uneasily, his jaw tight. "Emma, you don't understand," he muttered. Emma's eyes blazed as tears carved down her cheeks. "I understand enough," she replied. The air between them was thick, each word like thunder ready to split the world in half. Daniel raised his voice, desperation tangled in denial. "It wasn't what you think," he shouted, his words brittle with guilt. Emma's face twisted, her anger sharpening. "You shared with her what was mine," she spat. Rachel crossed her arms, enjoying the chaos, her smirk unwavering. Daniel's hands trembled, his mask of control unraveling. "I never meant for it to happen this way," he muttered. Emma's tears burned, each drop a fire. "You meant every word you wrote to her," she accused. His silence confirmed it, and the weight of his lies drowned the last fragments of her trust. Emma's voice cracked into a scream, a sound born from years of devotion shattered in seconds. "You broke me, Daniel," she cried. The words shook the room, her fury untamed. Daniel stepped back, his face pale, his excuses collapsing. Rachel's smirk faltered, unease flickering in her eyes. Emma's breath was jagged, her body trembling, yet her voice rose stronger. "I will not be your victim." Her eyes locked on both of them, unflinching. The storm outside roared as if echoing her rage. For the first time, Emma's pain transformed into defiance, fire rising from the ashes of betrayal. The room fell into silence, broken only by the rain hammering the glass. Emma's chest rose and fell, her fury settling into icy calm. Rachel tilted her head, her smirk faint but sharp. Emma whispered, "You think you've won, but you've only revealed who you are." Her words cut through Rachel's mask, striking deeper than a scream. Daniel's face sagged under the weight of truth, his lies powerless now. Emma's strength filled the silence, a force neither of them could deny. Her calm was more terrifying than rage, her voice the final judgment in a trial built from broken vows. Emma's eyes shimmered with both pain and strength as she whispered, "This is where it ends." Her voice quivered, but her words carried the weight of finality. Daniel reached out, but she stepped back, her tears blazing like fire. Rachel's smirk returned, softer, almost mocking, but Emma didn't falter. She turned away, her body shaking, torn between revenge and release. The storm rattled the windows, as if urging her to choose. Emma closed her eyes, whispering to herself, "I will not break again." In that moment, she knew her next step would define her future, whether in vengeance or in freedom. The house was quiet now, but silence was heavier than thunder. Emma moved slowly, picking up scattered remnants of her life. A broken frame, torn notes, pieces of a world that no longer belonged to her. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "This isn't my prison anymore." Her chest ached, but there was a flicker of strength inside her. Every broken piece reminded her of what was lost, but also what she could rebuild. For the first time since the storm began, she felt the faintest glimmer of control, fragile but real, as if her spirit was stitching itself back together. Olivia wrapped her arms tightly around Emma, her embrace stronger than words. "You're not alone," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. Emma clung to her sister, her tears soaking Olivia's shoulder. For the first time, her sobs were not screams of despair but of release. Olivia's steady presence anchored her, a reminder that love still existed in the ruins. Emma whispered, "I don't know if I can survive this," and Olivia held her tighter, replying, "You already are." In her sister's arms, Emma allowed herself to believe that even in betrayal, she was not entirely broken. Emma sat alone in the backyard, the night sky sprawling above her. In her trembling hands, she held a wedding photo, her tears staining its surface. With a sharp inhale, she struck a match and touched the flame to its edge. She watched as the fire consumed the smiles, the vows, the illusions. "Goodbye," she whispered, her voice shaking yet resolute. Ash drifted into the wind, carrying fragments of a life that no longer defined her. Her chest felt lighter, though the ache remained. In the burning, she found a fragile kind of freedom, a release from the chains of his betrayal. Emma stood on the balcony, watching the horizon bathed in hues of dying light. Her arms wrapped around herself, a quiet shield against the chill. She whispered, "I'm still here." Her heart still bore the weight of betrayal, but the sunset painted a reminder that endings were also beginnings. The silence around her no longer mocked, it soothed. She breathed deeply, letting the cold air fill her lungs, feeling both fragile and alive. The world had not ended, though hers had changed forever. In that moment, she allowed herself to imagine a future shaped not by lies, but by her own strength. Later that night, Emma sat by the window, candlelight flickering across her face. She held a journal in her lap, pen poised between trembling fingers. Slowly, she began to write, her words spilling like wounds bleeding onto paper. "I am broken, but I am not lost," she wrote. Her tears fell onto the page, smudging the ink, but she kept writing, determined. For the first time, she was shaping her story, not as a victim, but as a survivor. Her heart still hurt, but in the glow of the candle, there was a fragile spark of hope, fragile, yet unbreakable. The phone sat heavy in Emma's hand, her fingers trembling as she dialed the one person she thought she could still trust. Each ring echoed louder than her heartbeat. "Please pick up," she whispered, her voice cracking. But only silence answered. Her chest tightened, the emptiness on the other end crushing her. She closed her eyes, whispering again, "Don't leave me too." The silence was final, heavier than words. It was then Emma realized that sometimes even the lifelines you cling to cannot hold you. And in that silence, she felt truly, painfully, alone. Emma sat in the silence, the phone slipping from her hand onto the floor with a hollow thud. She pulled her knees to her chest, arms wrapped tightly around herself. "I've always been alone," she whispered, her voice breaking as fresh tears streaked her face. The weight of betrayal pressed harder, crushing her spirit in waves. The room seemed colder, the walls closing in, her own breath sounding like a stranger's. She rocked slowly, as if trying to cradle herself against the emptiness. The truth burned mercilessly. Trust had abandoned her, love had deceived her, and solitude was her only companion. From across the cafe the next day, a stranger noticed her. Ethan, unaware of her story, simply saw a woman broken in silence. His gaze lingered, filled with compassion rather than pity. Emma lifted her head slightly, meeting his eyes for a fleeting moment. For the first time in days, her breath steadied. She looked away quickly, ashamed of her tears, but the warmth in his gaze followed her. It wasn't love, not even hope, just recognition. A reminder that even in her solitude, she was still visible. And maybe, just maybe, not completely forgotten. That night, Emma sat in her bedroom again, the candle flickering at her side. She whispered, "I carry the weight of what they did to me." Her tears slipped silently, but her jaw was set. The grief had not disappeared, but it was no longer endless. Each tear was part of her release, proof that she was still alive. The silence no longer mocked her, it bore witness to her pain. She placed her hand over her heart, whispering, "I will keep moving." The betrayal still clawed at her, but beneath it, strength pulsed quietly, refusing to die. Emma stood before the window, her reflection fractured by streaks of rain outside. She stared at herself, not as a wife, not as a victim, but as a woman scarred yet standing. Her lips parted, a whisper escaping into the storm. "I survived." The words were not triumphant, but raw, fragile, and defiant. The rain pounded harder, echoing her truth. She did not know where her path would lead, but she knew this. The lies had broken her world, yet they had not ended her. And as the storm raged outside, she became the silence that endured within.